Honestly, the alternate name for this video could just be like, I'm ranking my entire childhood, and it's very difficult. Hello, my name is Freyr. I'm your favorite local forest gremlin and a Polish sociology student, and I want to welcome you to my little corner of the internet where I discuss all forms of popular media that interest me, whether that's books, TV shows, or music. And today I'm gonna attempt to do the impossible, and that is to tier rank every major Riordanverse book. Now, the word every is going to have an asterisk to it. I did not end up including the Staff of Serapis and the Son of Sobek in this video, as well as some of like the guides and stuff like that. As you can tell, we're going to have 5 tiers today. I have decided to customize them a little bit, and I also have made my little like stickers for the book covers and stuff like that. It's going to be very, very fun. But before I get into the actual ranking, I would quickly like to remind you that you can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have some Percy Jackson content already up, and there's probably going to be some more that's going to be coming in the coming days. You can always like the video, you can comment down below, you can hype it, you can share it around with your friends, and you can also follow me on all of my other social media. Those include Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all those places. And with that, I think it's time to get into the tiers.
Whew! It is hot as a witch's coochie out here. Hey, Facebook!
I apologize for my handwriting in advance. I'm sure it's going to be difficult to read. I'm sorry. The first tier that we have at the very bottom is Otis and Ephialtes like this book. Of course, that is referring to the twin giants that we see in The Mark of Athena. And listen, like, not to be rude to them, they're fun, but like, what is their taste? You know, like, one of them, I believe, wanted to have ballerinas in the middle of like the destruction of Rome. Like, where's the decorum? This is where the books that I personally just don't vibe with at all are going to be landing. This is not going to be a very populated tier because I pretty much love all of the Riordanverse books except for like maybe one. So yeah. Up next, we have the Oracle's Prophecy. That's going to be our second to last tier. Basically, you know, Oracle's prophecies are important for the plots, but oftentimes they're very convoluted and they lead to a lot of sadness, a lot of confusion, and also fear. Therefore, the books in this tier are important, and I like elements of them, but I also don't like all of the elements that they introduce. Like they do seem a little convoluted in places. They are necessary, just like the Oracle's prophecies are, but you know, I could do without them. Our third tier is called Ella Recommends. That is, of course, referring to Ella from The Son of Neptune, who we get introduced to, who has read practically every book that exists and has memorized so many books, including the prophecies of Sibylla. I believe that's how we pronounce the name. So this is where the book that I like are going to be landing. You know, I like them. However, Ella recommends this book, and she has read like so many other books. So like, does it mean it's good, or does it just mean that she read it and she just remembers the whole thing? Like, you know, it's good, it's fun, but is it like perfect? I wouldn't say so. Up next is Apollo's Haikus. This is where the good books are gonna be landing. Like this is the place for the books that do practically everything good. Everything is perfect. Maybe I have some like critique here and there, but like other than that, perfect, job well done, 10 out of 10. And finally, we have Calliope helped to write this. This is, of course, referring to one of the muses of Apollo, Calliope, who oftentimes would be depicted as, you know, the patron of authors. And, like, you know, they would be writing their big pieces of literature and they would be, like, asking for her blessing. Rick Riordan asked for that blessing and he received it because this book is fucking perfect. I love it. It's everything to me. That's what this tier is for. And this tier is going to be very populated, let me tell you. Now, before we get into like the actual books that I have to rank here, because I have like a lot of them, I want to say that I am Polish, right? And that might seem irrelevant, but you have to also remember that I've read all of these books in Polish, meaning that I had to translate some of the names and like look some of the like pronunciation up. So if any of that is off in this video, that's why. That's just like a language barrier thing. It's not that I actually don't know the books. Like That would be a ridiculous claim. I fucking love these books. The first book I actually got from the Riordanverse, this is kind of a funny story. I was like 10 going into 11, I think. And I was in this like Polish bookstore, which is called Empik. I saw one of the books of, I think it was Apollo's, The Trials of Apollo. And I think I saw the second part and then I saw the first part and I was like, wait, this looks cool. I like this cover. And that was like around the time that I was like really, really, really getting into reading. I literally just munched the entirety of the Fablehaven series, Ranger's Apprentice, stuff like that. So I really wanted something new to just like eat, genuinely, like devour. And I found that book, the first book of The Trials of Apollo. And I was like, hey, I'm gonna buy it. I bought it. I took it home and then I realized as I was reading it that this is not a book that you can start a series with. And then I started to Google and I found out that indeed this is not a beginning of a series. This is like a continuation of a series. This is another series that like is after so many other books, which I have not read. So I put a hold in the first book of The Trials of Apollo and I was like, okay, I read it halfway. I'm going to read it again when I get to that. And then I went back and actually bought The Lightning Thief, and that's kind of how it all started. So I like kind of made a mistake. I didn't research that. I mean, I was 11, so like what like honest mistake, But I have read all of these books. I've spent so much time with them. I mean, with some of the later ones, I wouldn't say as much time, but I have so much love and so much respect for these books and for Rick Riordan as well. He kind of like helped to, in a way, form my childhood. So this video is like, I don't know, a way of like honoring, my past, my childhood. It's so cool. Damn, I love doing videos like these. I should do that more often, actually. But with that, probably too long of an intro, I want to get into the ranking of these books, actually. We're going to be going in chronological order. And the first book that we have is The Lightning Thief. Now, you can imagine some of the covers I have, especially for the earlier books, do not match. I know there are like a series of covers for them. I was 11 when I was buying these books, therefore I didn't know about that. And I was just picking whichever one I had to read next. So there was not much thinking about collecting. This book is old as hell and I've read it so many times. Also, everyone say hello to Logan Lerman. I didn't like the films, of course, but honestly, his casting as Percy was kind of fun. Like, honestly, he was great. I mean, this book is a classic. I think this book is a perfect introduction to the series. It sketches out such a fully realized world with clear rules and lore. It makes it all so accessible and easy to understand. Like, I was 11 when I was first reading this and I immediately got hooked into it. I immediately understood exactly what was going on because of how well the world is introduced. There's so much immediate potential for more world building, and I love that. The story of The Lightning Thief I always thought was good, although that might be like the nostalgia colored glasses that I'm wearing typically when I talk about this book, because like I think for other people who might have, read these books a little later and who don't have, again, the connection with them that I do, I think there are flaws that could be like mentioned here and there, because like if you really think about it, this story is kind of insane. Even for like Riordanverse standards, like these are 12-year-olds traveling from New York across the fucking country, 12-year-olds. And they're doing all of that in a span of a fucking week. Like that is kind of insane. But either way, it's a full, complete plot. It has fun characters. The writing in it, I love it. It's so peak. I think the best writing in Riordanverse we see in those like middle series. I would say like around like Heroes of Olympus, Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. But I think this specific book shows so much promise and it's also just a very fun read. Like you can take this book and just like read it in like one sitting, one evening, because it's so captivating and it immediately pulls you in. The character of Percy too is just such a fun narrator. I love seeing things from his perspective. Annabeth and Grover too, I love them. I would genuinely not change a single thing about their characters. I think they're so good and so compelling. I love their personalities. I love how they interact. And I kind of think that like in some of the later books, specifically like the spin-offs, I do think that Rick Riordan kind of tried to recreate the dynamic that Percy, Annabeth and Grover have, but it just never felt the same since we've been introduced to the original trio. You cannot outdo the doer, you know? The twist at the end of this book was genuinely like earth-shattering for 11-year-old me. Like, I was reading this and being like, what the actual fuck? And I also love that this series introduces us to a villain that like technically isn't wrong in what he's doing. Luke is a great villain because you read these books and you can immediately see what he's doing and like understand why he's doing what he's doing. And like, it makes sense. Luke's whole thing is that gods mistreat their children and that they are awful and they are ruining this world. Therefore, we need to overthrow them. And like, I agree with you in like the first half of this statement, but then you also get to see him, you know, try to actually destroy the gods. And it just, I love characters like these because like I agree with him 100% in what he's thinking, but not with what he's doing. I genuinely don't feel like you see characters like this often. That's a treat for me personally. I love an intriguing villain with a compelling backstory who is like actually interesting to look at and to like analyze. And Luke is probably one of the best villains of the entire series because he actually like, there's so much you can do and so much you can analyze, especially when we get to the later parts of him, you know, and his devotion to Kronos, his parents, the backstory of his mom later on. Ooh, the Lightning Thief is going to land in Apollo's haikus. I think that this is the perfect way to like start the series and to get people interested. I think when you look at some of the later books, I definitely don't think that this is the strongest of the series, but like, it's also like a perfect start, and I wouldn't be mad for anyone who would like place it in the highest tier. I think it would be deserved. I personally am gonna place it here, but either way, I love this book. It genuinely was like world changing for me when I was 11. And now we get another book, which is The Sea of Monsters. This is the follow-up to The Lightning Thief, and this is also the book that is currently the talk of the town, mostly because of the Percy Jackson show, which is currently on its second season, and it's about to end like next week. I mean, at the time of me filming this, it's going to end next week. When you're watching this, it would have already ended. And I also am going to have a video up on my YouTube channel about season 2 and about the conversation around book purism, because I think it's very, very important. As a follow-up to The Lightning Thief, I like The Sea of Monsters. However, I do not love it. I like the narrative potential of The Sea of Monsters and the Golden Fleece and stuff like that. I love the big stakes that are immediately introduced in this book. However, I do think that the pacing in it is very, very off. This is something that I really, really started to notice, especially around the second season of the show premiering, because I think the show has much better pacing than the books ever did. It allows itself to breathe, to have these like emotional moments, these conversations when we actually get to, you know, learn more about these characters. We get to see them talk through different things. And The Sea of Monsters, of course, has moments like these. I would say probably like the siren scene, for example, and the fallout of that is like a good example. But other than that, it's like every single chapter something happens. We have another big bad to defeat. We are on the quest to find the Golden Fleece and to journey to Polyphemus' island. And it's like there's so much going on that we actually don't really get to see, you know, all of these different conversations play out. Like what the show has been doing with, for example, Luke and Annabeth and the tension between them and their relationship with Folia, we never really see that in the books, aside from like few little moments. And then Thalia suddenly reappears and all of that conversation is just non-existent beforehand. And after she reappears, we get to see some of it, but it's like, I don't know. I kind of think that season 3 is probably going to do it slightly better than the books did. We kill monster after monster. We have another big bad to face, another like cataclysm, another problem. It's just so much. We rarely ever get to see these characters actually sit down and talk about themselves or like how they feel. I don't know, anything really. And that is kind of a problem. However, this is something that I would say the rest of the books actually kind of fix going forward. I wouldn't say that I have the same complaint about most of the later books. I think it can be applied to a few, but like very, very few. I like the writing of The Sea of Monsters. I like the plot of it. However, I do think that the big bads of this book specifically feel very, very surface level to me. And it becomes even more exaggerated when you look at the show, actually, because what they've done to, for example, Cersei or to Polyphemus for that matter, is like, it adds so much depth to these characters. Meanwhile, here in this book, Cersei is like just there for the fun of it, really. Like, she doesn't really have a point. It's not like she, is delusional like in the show and she doesn't want to be abandoned. I don't think her character in the book is very interesting. I don't think Polyphemus is that interesting in the books either. I do like this book specifically for the introduction of Tyson. I love Tyson, and I think that it does add more depth to Annabeth's character because we do get to learn a bit about her, which I think is very necessary after The Lightning Thief, because she's kind of there and she does do something. We do learn stuff about her, but I think the Sea of Monsters is where we finally get to see her like open up about things, and that I love. Overall though, I like this book. I think it's fine, but it's like the epitome of fine. I would say out of the original 5, this is definitely my least favorite book. Some of you might think that this placing is like very, very harsh, but I have to be a little harsh in this video because like the top end of this tier is going to be so stacked. So unfortunately, the Sea of Monsters is gonna land in the Oracle's Prophecy tier. The Curse of the Titan, however, this is the peakest peak to ever peak. This is 100% the best book in the original 5. This is one of those hills that I am willing to die on. This book is fucking phenomenal. This book introduces so many new stakes to the story. Like, you have a fucking goddess be kidnapped in this book. Like, that's crazy, And also, you have the first character deaths of the fucking series, which is crazy. I will never forget reading this for the first time because I was gagged. And this was also the first time I ever cried because of a book, and specifically because of Bianca D'Angelo, but also Zoe. Oh my god. Nico and Bianca are everything to me, especially Nico, because like I've gotten more attached to him because he actually gets to do things post the Curse of the Titan because he survives it. Bianca not so much, but I also really do like her. And I oftentimes wish that we would actually get to see more of Nico and Bianca together, like working together when she was still alive. Of course, she does reappear in different places in the series, but she's already dead. I would like to see, that sibling bond they have. Her death is so sudden. Like I was shocked when I first was reading this. The first 2 books establish that we have some sort of like world-threatening danger and dangerous missions, but nothing really happens as a result of them. We have more dramatic moments. We have Tyson and his like fake out death, but it's a fake out death. He survives that. Meanwhile, this book takes everything we've seen up until this point, turns that up to 11, and then leaves the reader shocked. It also solidifies that, this is serious, like people are dying. But the seriousness doesn't just rely on like the character deaths. You have a goddess be captured, which I mentioned before. You have teenagers holding up the sky. You have like parental trauma. You have Pan finally giving like signs of life. There's grief, abandoned siblings. You have another kid of the Big Three be introduced in the form of Nico. There's so much here. So much. This is a life-changing read, and I stand by that. Every single time I reread this, I get emotional because especially knowing what comes next for Nico specifically, like he's lost everything and then he has problems with opening it up to people and he feels like he doesn't have a place. And like, oh my god, I love Nico D'Angelo and he deserves the world. The entire plotline with Annabeth being gone and Percy trying his best to find her and save her and believing that she's actually, alive when some of the people doubt that. People don't do ships anymore like Rick Riordan did Percybeth. Percybeth is Percybething in this book, let me tell you. Their relationship is just so special to me. And this is the thing about me. I never really care that much about straight ships because I myself happen to not be straight. But this is one of those examples where I start to give a fuck actually because their dynamic and their like slow burn over the series is so well done. Curse of the Titan is the book where Mr. Riordan unlocked the true power of the Riordanverse. This book is epic, it's mind-blowing, but it can also be very devastating in places. Like I could not recommend this book enough. Sometimes when I'm doing rereads, I genuinely tend to skip like the Sea of Monsters and go straight from The Lightning Thief to this one because these two books are just so good. The Titan's Curse is gonna land in the highest tier in this video. Calliope helped write this, and I mean, she very clearly did. Up next, we have Battle of the Labyrinth. This is kind of like a sneak favorite of mine when it comes to the original 5 books. I think The Last Olympian and Curse of the Titan are considered to be like the 2 favorites amongst the fandom. I agree, but also like the Battle of the Labyrinth is also fucking phenomenal. You have the travels through the labyrinth, you have the entire thing with Daedal and his backstory, which gets fleshed out so well in this book. You have Kronos finally appearing for the first time in the flesh. Also, Calypso and Pan are in this book. Like, there's a lot to talk about, a lot to sink your teeth into. This book, for how much happens in it, actually, I would say has very, very good pacing. And it isn't even like that long. I think it has like, 400 pages maybe? You get the moments to breathe, but then again, you're never bored when reading it. There's always something happening in the background. And I think it's really, really good. I actually think it's so surprising that Rick Riordan was able to like stick so much into this book and not have it feel jumbled. This is something that he later kind of repeats with some of the Heroes of Olympus books, but sometimes not as successful as the Battle of the Labyrinth, if I'm to be honest. So, you know, we're gonna talk about that in a second. This book contains so much that I love. However, there's one thing that always like leaves me scratching my head a bit, and that is the entire Calypso part, which I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. Like, it's a weird thing to include in this book. From a narrative standpoint, we know that Percybeth is like the #1 ship at this point in the timeline. But then you have this book, which introduces 2 other love interests for Percy, those being Rachel Elizabeth Dare and Calypso. I was never one of those people that was like, oh my god, Calypso needs to die or something. Like, no, I like her. I think the more we get to see of her, especially in the Trials of Apollo, I actually do enjoy to some extent. I think I have some qualms with her character, with how she's handled, but it's not bad. I just think that this inclusion here specifically is almost like not necessary. Like, this part happens directly, I think, after our first Percybeth kiss and Percy having a fake out death. So he lands on Calypso's island, which I believe was called Ogygia or like something. I don't know how to pronounce that in English. In Polish, I think it would be just like Ogygia or something like that. I don't know. But that happens directly after the first kiss of Percybeth. And I'm like, what is why are we doing that? Why are we introducing so much like doubt for this relationship? Like, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But then also when you think about it in the context of Leo, when she later shows up in the Heroes of Olympus and Leo, like, you know, promises to save her, unlike Percy, because Percy never returns to Ogygia. And then you have the entire subplot of Leo being like weird to Percy because he finds out about the fact that Percy was also there and he, like, you know, broke Calypso's heart. So he's like weird to him. That entire thing is just, I don't know. It gets resolved very, very quickly, but it like lasts for a little too long, in my opinion. I mean, I guess good that they interact, because other than that, they don't really get one-on-one time like at all. But still, it's a little bit of a weird element to introduce, in my opinion. And also, Percy, his feelings towards Calypso are so poorly explained. Like, what do you mean she's always going to be your biggest what if? What does that entail? Like, did he fall for her or not? The Battle of the Labyrinth is gonna land in Apollo's haikus. I like this book. I do have like slight critique, as you could tell from the entire Calypso section. I don't know how to feel. I would really like to know how you guys feel about Calypso and her writing in these books. I mean, she's gonna come up later in this video when we talk about the Trials of Apollo specifically, but I don't know. I feel like it's a very like weird topic just in general when it comes to the Riordanverse. Like, there's something off there. And finally, the last part of the original 5 is The Last Olympian, which this is my copy of it. I think this book is very good. This book is just epic in every way, shape, or form. Just in general, I have a very high standard for books that are supposed to close off a series. And I think you're gonna definitely see that with some of the later books and how they're going to be ranked. But this one specifically, I really, really enjoy. Because like, if the closing isn't good, I'm gonna remember that. And then the image of the entire series gets tainted in my head because I'm like, okay, the rest of the books were good, but like the ending for these characters kind of sucks. And that has happened before. Like, I think a good example of that would sort of be Ranger's Apprentice and the way they handle like probably like most of the characters actually in book 12. And of course, book 12 is not the last book of the Ranger's Apprentice series. However, it ruins the characters we knew before so much, and it's kind of like an end of an arc for some of them, like specifically for Will. I've read that book one time, and never since. I'm sorry, I was so pissed with how these characters were handled and how that specific part of the story was handled and how it ended. I never returned to it since. Never. I mean, I have reread some of the Ranger's Apprentice books from before. I definitely like to come back to some of them, but I never finish my rereads. I never like go like in chronological order and then finish on 12 because I just don't want to. Like, I don't want to read that ending. It's horrible. The Last Olympian, though, is perfect. The tension in this book, you can fucking cut it with a knife. I kind of enjoy the vibe of like the siege of Manhattan. I mean, I think it's a weird thing to say, to like enjoy a vibe of whatever. I think it's very well done, and the kind of like atmosphere of this book is really, really fun to me. Like it's a great reading experience. It feels like you have this like rebellion that you're actively watching and almost participating in. I like that vibe. I like that vibe a lot, actually. There's a lot of like mind games in this book that the characters have to face. You know, you have the still ongoing prophecy, which we still don't know how it's going to end and how it's going to be resolved. And it's hinting at Percy dying. So the entirety of the book, Percy is kind of like grappling with the idea that he might not live to see the world after the Battle of Manhattan. You also have Prometheus showing up at one point, and his entire shtick, that was mind game central over there. Ethan Nakamura is an absolute menace in this book. Annabeth gets hurt. Like, there's so much good food here. Also, that entire like quest regarding the Curse of Achilles and Luke's backstory, meeting his mom for the first time, meeting with Hestia as well. Like, everything around that is perfect. And I also kind of like that we get to see a villain be explained here. I typically am not the biggest fan of like villains that we're supposed to sympathize with as an audience when, you know, like a writer or a showrunner throws us this like redemption arc for a villain. I don't really like that. I sometimes just like villains who are just evil for the sake of being evil. Like, I don't need you to have a traumatic backstory or whatever. But here it actually works because Luke, unpopular opinion, Luke is never really the villain. Like, Luke is being manipulated. Yes, he does some very, very fucked up things, but he never like really is a villain. It's always Kronos at the end of the day. He's just like being manipulated by him. And also, half of what Luke believes in, Percy agrees with, and it's like very clearly stated in the books that like Percy agrees with Luke. He just doesn't agree on the method of how they achieve that. And I also love that like technically Luke's goal kinda gets fulfilled by the end of the book with what Percy asks the gods to do for him. I find that a very, very cool ending to the whole arc. This book really ups the stakes for the final battle so much. I hate half-assed, rushed finales. This book, however, is just perfect. The feeling of doom, the loss, the just destruction. This isn't a final conflict that gets resolved in the last 50 pages. This is a final conflict that lasts the entirety of this book, and I think it's a perfect ending to the story. The Last Olympian lands in the Calliope helped write this tier. I think she definitely did help write this ending. I think it's a perfect ending for all of the characters. I think it gives us closure. I think it sets some very interesting things to be later discussed in the coming books. I really enjoyed this. And now we go to the second series of Riordanverse, which is, of course, The Lost Hero. Everyone remembers where they were when they opened up this book, and the first word you read is Jason. Like, who the fuck is Jason? And like, I'm actually asking because I'm kind of like, don't know. I kind of love this book. I love that we get, you know, a palette cleanser in a way with these 3 new characters, even though as for like all of the characters that get introduced in the Heroes of Olympus series, I would say that the Piper, Leo, Jason trio is probably my least favorite. Everybody loves Leo, and like, duh, I also love Leo. How could I not? Piper, I actually think that I warmed up to her more as we got to see more of the Heroes of Olympus books unravel, and, you know, we later get to see her in the Trials of Apollo as well. I think the more time she gets to be in the center of a story, the more I start liking her. Jason, however, I mean, I think this might be the take that can get some people angry with me in the comments. I never really liked Jason that much. Again, I didn't hate him. I thought he was a fun character. However, I just didn't love him at all, really. He has this like insanely traumatic story and is very cool. And I do think he's written well, but I don't know. He feels a little too tame for me. Maybe I would have liked him more if there was like an actual story in the Riordanverse that would be like canon, that would explore, you know, him learning about the gods and like, you know, his adventures before he loses his memories and gets used by Hera. Like, I think that would probably create more attachment to him for me personally, because when we meet him, he's like already kind of has all of that figured out. And I don't know, I kind of like to see characters who can like evolve. I don't think Jason evolves in these books. The only like character growth he has is learning about the Greek side of the gods and also regaining his memories. That's literally the only growth we see from him. And I don't know, I kind of find that a little boring in places. Also, another unpopular opinion maybe, but I never liked Piper with Jason. I was never a fan of them. And like, the books kind of acknowledge that this relationship is kind of crazy because they are fully just like manipulated and gaslighted by Hera into being in this relationship. And after, you know, the events of the first book and after, you know, all of that gets solved, they go along with it for a few months. But this relationship was always destined to end. Like, I remember people being like surprised around the third book of the Trials of Apollo, where it's revealed that they are no longer dating. I'm like, how are you guys surprised? Like, look where they started. And you think they could have a happy ending as a couple after they've been gaslighted by a goddess into being in a relationship? Like, that was never going to work. I'm sorry. That was never going to work out for them. And the fact that they went along with it for 5 books in and of itself is like impressive. And also, like, the only time I ever cared about them as a couple was book 3 of the Trials of Apollo. That was the only time. And also, that's one thing that I have to give to Rick, like, props to him, because I think a lot of the times when you have writers put different characters in relationship with each other, especially in these like teen, you know, young adult fantasy series, it definitely feels like authors like put them in these relationships and they just kind of leave them there. They do not want to break up these relationships, even when it's clear that they are clearly not working out. But here they go along with this relationship, but they end up breaking up. And I think that's like very refreshing to see, honestly, because I could have just seen, you know, Rick trying to keep on writing them as a couple. I think that could have a lot of like narrative payoff, especially in book 3 of Trials of Apollo. However, I'm glad that they actually break up by that point. I think it's better for both of the characters, and I think it actually makes for a more interesting dynamic in that book. I really like the Lost Hero for the plot and the antagonist it introduces. I think Gaia as an antagonist is so cool. Because she's literally everywhere. She's the Earth. She is all powerful. She has the giants. Like, she is a threat. But this book really sets Gaia as this like insane level threat. Like, Kronos compared to her was child's play. that was nothing. We're literally fighting the earth. And I think a good example of how this book sets her up to be this like very, very big threat is through, for example, the traumatic past of Leo. Like, she has been at it. She has been trying to ruin these people's lives for a while now, and she's not stopping now, and she's only gonna get stronger now. So we need to stop her. But how are we gonna stop the literal embodiment of Earth? I also love the concept of the giants and how they are, you know, the exact opposite of the god that they're trying to kill. And I also love that you can only kill them when you have a god and a demigod working together. I think that's very, very poetic, especially when you look at what happens in the Last Olympian and also the fallout of that, and how Zeus shuts down Olympus and prohibits the gods from contacting their children, aside from, like, you know, claiming them in camp. So I think that's very, very cool to see. This book as a whole, I think, is fine. It introduces some characters. It does that well. I think it serves its purpose. I do, however, think that when it comes to like the story of an introduction to new characters, I do prefer the Son of Neptune. But The Lost Hero still has a lot going for it. Like, for example, the story with Piper's dad and all of that like blackmail practically that is done. Like, that is so scary. And actually makes me feel a lot of things. You have Jason and Thalia reuniting, although that one, I don't know. I kind of expected Thalia to react slightly different when, you know, she sees a brother that she hasn't seen for ages because she thought he was dead. Like, I don't know. That reunion is a little weird. But just in general, I do enjoy The Lost Hero. Again, I like The Lost Hero. However, I do not think that this book is without its flaws, and therefore it's gonna land in the Ella recommends tier. Okay, kids had their fun. Now it's time for men to have a turn, okay? This book, The Son of Neptune, is so fucking good. This is where the concept of the 7 demigods, you know, traveling to kill Gaia really, really starts to work for me. I love it. All threats materialize even more. The stakes grow higher. The pending doom of Camp Jupiter is such a great motivator for the characters. And listen, don't get me wrong. Like, the destruction of Hera and that possibility in book 1 is also like scary in a way, because like it can lead to horrible things. We as readers, though, are not programmed to enjoy Hera or whatever she does. Like, even in The Lost Hero, she's kind of a bitch still. And, you know, you have her entire thing with Jason and how she treats him as like basically her servant in a way, like her little hero, her little fighter, which is just so weird. So like, I personally, you know, I understand why we need to save her, but I don't really care about saving Hera. Like, she could die there. I wouldn't give a flying fuck. But Camp Jupiter is a different thing. It's a great place, and you can immediately see that this is a place that deserves saving. And I think that's part of, you know, the motivation of Percy at this book, because he also loses his memories because of Hera. And speaking of Percy, I actually think that his memory loss works so much better than Jason's, because we know who he is. And as a result, watching him try to remember his past life, Annabeth, what he can do, what he went through, his friends, his family, is even more tragic, because we already know what he had before. We know what he lost. He doesn't. But watching him trying to figure that out and trying to regain these memories is actually so sad. It puts into perspective just how awful Hera is, because like, yeah, this was necessary in order to kickstart the events that would lead to, you know, the killing of Gaia. But at the same time, she is playing with these people's lives like she owns them, and that's not the case. Also, Hazel and Frank are in this book, and I love them. They could never make me hate Hazel and Frank. Whenever they appear in these books, it's always a good time. But if we're talking interesting characters, these are interesting characters. Their backstories are so good, and how they both have to overcome so much in order to complete this quest. It's such great payoff. I actually do consider Frank and Hazel as examples of perfect character writing. You have Hazel coming back from the dead and having to face off against the person who took her life before, and also having to deal with the repercussions of her mistakes from the past. And then you also have Frank, who feels useless and then gets claimed by the god of war, which is the one thing that he hates the most because that took his mother. So that feels like a big joke to him. And he also technically has some like a gift that he inherited that he doesn't know what it is and he doesn't know how to use that. He also, has his life force be depending on a branch that can just like burn. And apparently that branch, that stick or whatever it's called in the English version of the books, is there and it's connected to his life force because he's too strong, but he isn't too strong. He doesn't know why he's so strong. He doesn't feel like he's strong. He feels useless. Like, oh my God, I love their characters so much. I genuinely think that the fandom doesn't pay enough attention to Hazel and Frank. I think they should be way more popular than they are. This book is so cool. The fight scenes are great. I think the antagonists are amazing. We see more giants. Gaia continues to be a menace. You have the politics of Camp Jupiter, which are also very complicated, but I also love seeing, this different world from Camp Half-Blood, which is this like, it's a very carefree place in a way. And then you have this like very strict and controlled and rigid format of Camp Jupiter. It's such a refresher. This is a very complex, a very fun read, but it also prompts some reflections to be done by the reader, which I also love. And then again, it also features Hazel and Frank, and I love them. So this is a perfect book in my opinion. Some of you are gonna disagree with me, but this book was co-written by Calliope, and I know it. And I think everybody with taste knows it as well. And now we move on to The Mark of Athena. I think this book is so special, and I love that it focuses on Annabeth. Annabeth, of course, is very important to the series. She is one of the main protagonists in the original 5 books. She also appears in The Lost Hero. But like, this is the first time we ever get to see her like actually take center stage, and we get to see things from her perspective. Even in the original 5, it's always Percy who's the narrator. He observes what Annabeth's doing. But now we finally get to see what's inside of her head. We get to see her style of narration, and it's so good. On paper, she is the weakest of the 7 who are chosen to, embark on this journey, yet she goes on her own quest. And I mean, it makes me respect her even more. Like, you do not fuck around with Magnus Chase. Other than that, I am obsessed with the 7 demigods that we get to see finally, come together and try and work together. This is a lot of main characters, but I think they all get to do stuff somewhere throughout the series, whether it's in this book or in some of the later books, that kind of makes up for this. Like, it doesn't feel overwhelming when you're reading this. Yes, a lot of main characters, but weirdly enough, like the pacing and the balance is there, and I like that. This book, of course, is more Annabeth focused, but the entire thing with like Leo, Frank, and Hazel and that like love triangle, you have Percy being worried for Annabeth. You also have Piper doubting herself all the time, which please don't, Queen, I love you, you're amazing. And then you have Jason, who faints a lot. It's fun. Like, I like this group. I like their adventures. I would like to see a show about it. And so would a certain Walker Scobell. I think this book also like leaves me with very interesting thoughts about Athena specifically and her relationship with her children. I was never too big of a fan of Athena in the original books. Like, she seemed so like cold and like, I don't know, standoffish in a way. But here I actually hate her so much. Like, Miss Woman, the only thing she cares about is that stupid statue, and she's sacrificing her kids, so many of her kids, to get that stupid statue back. Like, what a horrible, horrible mother. Like, when you put that into perspective, she is clinically insane. The way she treats Annabeth in this book is horrible. Like, I was never too big of a fan of Athena, but this book was like a nail in the coffin for me. I was like, nah, I am never forgetting this. The ending, though, I'm so happy I read this book years after it came out, because if I had to wait a year to find out what happens in the next book, I would have went insane. I don't know how you guys did it. I genuinely don't know how you guys managed to survive that wait, because I got all of the 5 books from the Heroes of Olympus series on my, I think it was my 13th birthday. So I just could literally just grab House of Hades immediately after I finished Mark of Athena, because I was so nervous. I was like, what the fuck just happened? But again, I do kind of like to be left on a cliffhanger a bit. I mean, it's fun. It creates fun narratives, but man, I don't know how you guys did it. I salute to all of you who had to wait that year for the House of Hades to come out. I think you all deserve some free therapy hours, some free therapy sessions for that, because that is a feat in and of itself. I'm gonna put this book in Apollo's Haikus. I think this might be slightly controversial because I know that this book is like very, very beloved by the fandom. I personally also love it. I just prefer some of the other Heroes of Olympus books over it. I think it is very good still though, and I have mad respect for it. Next, we have a book that is very, very good for the Nico D'Angelo stance, aka me, which is of course House of Hades. Sometimes when I'm like rereading this book, I cannot help but to laugh at like the idea of like House of Hades, but like a gay house, you know, like when you have like ballroom culture and you have, you know, the House of Avalon, you know, the House of Balenciaga and stuff like, and then you have House of Hades, and I just imagine like Nico, like, you know, voguing and doing like death drops and shit. Like, fuck. I think that this book is kind of crazy, and I kind of love it for that. There's so much here, but specifically how this book and the next book, how they focus on Nico D'Angelo, that I love to see. Also, like, Nico isn't even a part of the 7, but he gets so much to do in this series, and I love that. I'm so happy he does. He is, like, objectively probably the most interesting character in the entirety of Riordanverse. So, like, I'm happy to see him back whenever I can. Although maybe not the most interesting, because some of the other spin-offs also... I mean, we're gonna talk about Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. That one. Ooh. The characters in that one are crazy. I would say Nico is probably the most interesting character on like the Greek/Roman side of the Riordanverse though. I love the double story with Percy and Annabeth, and then also the rest of the crew of Argo 2, like racing against time basically to reach the House of Hades to, you know, save Percy and Annabeth. That entire Tartarus section is crazy. Like the shit Percy and Annabeth have to go through there, I wonder how they even made it out. I mean, I've read the book, I know how, but like, I would not have been able to survive all that. Jesus didn't suffer as much as Annabeth and Percy did in Tartarus. Like, I stand by that. They had to go through physical and also psychological torture. A lot of times, both at once. It's like the shit they see in there and how it's described, it's so terrifying. Like, I rarely ever get like, so like, terrified of a vision that is like produced in a book. I don't really respond to that much. I think visual media has a bigger effect on me in that sense, but the description of Tartarus in this book is fucking insane. And the fact that this isn't even the last time that we see it, because it also returns in The Sun and the Star, that ending makes me cry every time without fail. But back to Nico. Him slowly opening up to Jason is great to see. And I think this is actually one of the only points in the story where I ever actually care about Jason Grace, because he's such a good friend to Nico, and I love that. I love them two together. They're so cute. And I think every queer person deserves a friend like Jason Grace. I love that Nico, you know, has a friend that he can talk to. But also, speaking of the relation and what they have to go through, Eros, jail to that man.
How dare you, Mr. Spears? You had me fooled. And you too, Mrs. Spears. Death to all of them.
I appreciate Nico and his story, but that was cruel. Like, him just having fun torturing this poor kid. He's 13 in this book. That's a child. Meanwhile, we have this old as hell god who's hee-ha-haing because he's forcing this little queer kid to come out. He's outing him in front of his friend because, how dare you have secrets and like love, and actually give me a gun. Like, insane behavior. And that I always had mixed feelings about, because I don't know. I like that Nico gets to like take his fate and his story in his own hands, and like how Eros is very clearly framed to not be a good person. But at the same time, the fact that this even happens is a little crazy. I don't know how you guys feel about this scene specifically. I would like to hear from you in the comments though about it. I feel very uncomfortable whenever I reviewed it. It's very scary, and unfortunately it's also like very real, and I can imagine that scenario. I kind of talked about it in my Stranger Things video that I did a couple weeks back about the whole plot of Vecna and Will, and how there's this like emotional blackmail, in parts, and how that is like a very, unfortunately, very like real life scenario. But seeing that always, I'm like, ooh, maybe I would actually not like to see that, please. But going back to like other things, I kind of love that this book takes Hazel and makes her into like a god level threat. Because think about it. She can summon precious metals and jewels. She can control them. She is great in like tunnels and underground areas. She has a magical horse. She has the powers related to Pluton. She can like, sense death and stuff like that. She has some powers that are like connected to the dead. And now she can also do magic and illusions. Like, Miss Girl is probably more powerful than Percy Jackson at this point. And you'll still don't like her. You'll still don't stand her. And I think that's wrong. We need more Hazel stans in the world. If you're a Hazel stan, this is your video. This video I dedicate to you. Sound off in the comments below. Hazel deserves more stans. She deserves to be more popular. And I will die on that hill. House of Hades is an amazing book. And I think it's emotional damage squared, which I love. And I'm going to put it in the Calliope helped write this tier. I think she kind of did. And then we move on to the last book from the Heroes of Olympus series, which is, of course, The Blood of Olympus. Listen, I love this book. However, I do have criticism against it. First of all, this entire series builds up Gaia as this like insane level threat. This is something that we've never faced before. This is something so dangerous, and we're probably all going to die trying to defeat her. And then they defeat her in like not even 30 pages. Like that entire scene is so short. She literally appears and she's like, oh my God, I'm going to kill all of you, right? And then she gets like taken by Festus and she just dies after. Like she's alive for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. She doesn't get to do shit after she comes back. And then she's automatically dead. I think it's sort of anticlimactic for such a like major antagonist to be defeated so quickly. Like it's kind of giving Vecna in a way. The fight with the giants is way cooler and actually has way more impact. Gaia almost feels like an afterthought in this finale, which is kind of sad because she's so powerful and honestly like so cruel and so like vicious. I would like to see Gaia actually like destroy something, but she never does. Another thing, this whole one of you will die storyline, I did not live. I did not like it. I did not enjoy it. I think it would have been way more effective if there was like less setup for it, because whilst you read this book, it becomes very clear what's going to happen in the final battle. You know that Leo is fucked. Because this entire book, we are hearing about different people talking about Leo and how, oh, something's wrong. They visit Asclepius and he's like looking at Leo and being like, oh, I'm so sorry. Then Leo gets to talk with Apollo and Artemis. Also suspicious. Like, you can tell what's going on so clearly. And I kind of wish that it was kept more of like a secret and kind of like a mystery of like what's going to happen. And we would get to see more characters like grapple with the thought of, oh my God, what if it's me dying? What if it's, I don't know, my close friend here dying? Like, what's going to happen? We need to sort of like protect each other, but we don't know who we need to protect and like what's going to happen. I think it would have been way more effective. Because this entire book, this entire time, we are hearing about Leo and everybody's already treating him like he's dead. And he isn't dead yet. I would have liked to be shocked a little. I don't know. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. But when it comes to the good parts of it, I kind of stopped caring about Argo 2 and its crew this book because much more interesting things were happening on the other side of the plot with Reina, Nico, and Coach Hedge. Reina's story is just heartbreaking, but also her connection to Nico and how they become friends is just so good. I love them two together. They're such a like unlikely duo, and also Coach Hedge in that dynamic is so cool. Like it's the most random selection of characters, but they have so much in common, and they like complete each other so well. And then that ending when Reina gives Nico like that big hug in public, like I genuinely could cry just thinking about it. Also, I'm a big fan of Octavian and his death. Not to be like mean or whatever, but I support that message. One thing most people don't talk about when it comes to the Blood of Olympus specifically is how insane the gods act in this one, but also like how well that sets up the future spin-off of the Trials of Apollo. Zeus in this book is an absolute ass in a way that he's never been before. Like, he's always been an asshole, but in this book, he's an entire ass. Like that's massive asshole. Massive ass. I don't know. He's just awful. He punishes Apollo. He almost does the same thing to Hera. Despite the fact that he sees what's going on and the gods fight against the giants with the demigods. The hypocrisy, the ego. And then we get to see later on an actual god try and like deconstruct that in the next series, which is great to see. The Blood of Olympus lands itself in the Ella recommends tier. I like this book. I like what it sets for the future, but I do find that final fight slightly anticlimactic, and the entire buildup of Gaia just kind of goes nowhere. And that is a big issue that is like not that easy to overlook, specifically with a finale like this. And as I said before, I am very judgmental when it comes to finales. So I'm sorry, this is the best I can give this book. Okay, now we get into the spin-offs, and we have the Red Pyramid. This is the first part of the Kane Chronicles. Out of all of the Riordanverse series, I would say I probably have the weakest connection to the Kane Chronicles, or maybe to the Trials of Apollo, but also like the Trials of Apollo, whenever I come back to them, I'm surprised by how much I like some of these books. So, and then the Kane Chronicles, I kind of don't have that. It's not because the books are bad. They're not. But I don't think they just like rubbed off on me the same way that some of the other books have. This is the story that follows Sadie and Carter Kane after their father takes them on a trip to the British Museum and explodes the Rosetta Stone, freeing some Egyptian gods from it. And I think it's a fun adventure. The lore of the Kane Chronicles, though, is a lot. I would say out of all of the lores that we get to see in the Riordanverse, this is definitely the one that feels the most mumbled to me. This book immediately throws you into this world. It takes no time to wait to show you what's exactly going on. But the way that it does that, it kind of leaves me feeling like one of the characters in the actual series, and that is confused. That's how the characters typically feel when they get introduced to, you know, the gods and stuff. But the reader probably doesn't feel confused, at least in most parts of the Riordanverse, but with the Kane Chronicles, he does. I mean, I do. I'm the reader, and I do feel confused. I think Matt and Duat, or however you pronounce that, that's how I always pronounce them. I don't know, maybe the pronunciation is different, but their concepts of like chaos and, you know, this like second skin of the world, that's very cool. And I think it gets more fleshed out as we go. But then there are other elements of this that are just like a lot, and they never really get explained. You have the portals, for example. Then you have the different types of mages that also never really get explored, aside from a couple of them. As far as we know, there are a lot of different types of mages in this book, but we only get to see like 3 to 4 of them really in action and really get explained, really. So that's, I don't know, that's not good world building in my opinion. You also have like the language of gods, you have the demons, how the afterlife works, how hosting a god looks like. It's a lot, it's confusing, and it only gets more confusing as we go along because new elements get introduced. Egyptian mythology just in general is very difficult to explain, and this book I think sort of does that, but in other places I don't think it leaves me with an understanding of the world that is given, like for example the Percy Jackson books do that. Other than that, I do actually like the Red Pyramid. I think the story of it is fun. I think it always keeps you on your toes, which is great. And I kind of like how the gods work so differently here than in other places of the Riordanverse, because, you know, you have the Greek and the Roman side of things where you have the demigods, and then you also have the Nordic gods, which also function sort of similarly to the Greek gods, at least for the most part. And then you have the Egyptian gods, which are just completely different from everything else that we see. There's no demigods, and it feels like an actual refresher. I also do really like Sadie. She is very fun. Carter, though, I like him a little less. I think he seems a little boring when compared to his sister. Like, he's trying to do stuff, and he like succeeds at it, but Sadie is just, I don't know, Sadie is just a little bit more cool in my opinion. I also really like the format of the Kane Chronicles being a voice recording. That is so cool. The Red Pyramid is gonna land in Ella Recommends tier. For the story of it, I do like it. However, the lore gets complicated very, very quickly, and it only gets worse from here. So this is the best I can do for the Red Pyramid, I think, really. The next book in the Kane Chronicles is, of course, The Throne of Fire. I kind of like this book. However, it also undermines my belief in these characters that we get to see for the first time in the Red Pyramid a lot. Both Sadie and Carter do some insanely stupid shit in this book that was very, very easily avoidable. Sadie, for example, she knows that the world is likely going to end in 4 days because Apophis, I don't know how you pronounce that in English. He's going to be like set free and he's going to eat the sun. So we have to like go and try and stop him, and we have to wake Ra. We have to, you know, save the world. And what does Sadie do before heading on that mission, knowing that she has 4 days? She goes to London to celebrate her birthday. Like, I get it. The world might be ending and you might not have another birthday next year because there's just not going to be a world anymore because the sun is going to get eaten and everything is going to be destroyed. However, at the same time, you have 4 days to save the world and you just wasted one of them because you decided to do a girls' trip to London. Like, I'm sorry, that's a little stupid to me. Like, girl, time and place. And then Carter, him attacking that monster in Moscow, getting bitten, then him trying to like desperately find Zia. Like, yeah, I get specifically the Zia part. It's like important for the plot. But then again, the way he frames that is just like, it makes me doubt whether he actually understands what's going on around him. And that's the same thing that happens with Sadie in this book too. Also, that entire section that happens in Duas in this book, where they are like on the quest to wake up Ra, makes me very confused specifically because of Sadie. Like, it's very well established that she is a powerful mage. We know that. However, she's reading the Book of Ra, casting these powerful spells in order to wake him up. She's exploding shit. She's fighting. How is that possible? The power balancing in this book is very, very off. And I mean, you can see glimpses of that in the Red Pyramid, especially around the fight with Seth. But this book just really, really takes that up to 11, I would say. What I really like in this book is the concept of Carter and Sadie starting like a school for mages who would be walking down the path of the gods, and like them trying to teach other like children, other teenagers of like how to do magic. That is actually a very cool concept. I can definitely see how that could be difficult for them. And I like that the book actually like explores that feeling of like, are we actually good mentors or are we not? I like that. And also I like the community aspect of all of that. That is very cute to see. And then on the other hand, you have Walt and you have his curse, which my jaw was on the floor when I first realized what that was and what that meant for him. Like, I was shocked. That is so horrifying and also so unfair. Ra being old and sort of useless is also like very sad and scary, specifically because they find him at a point in the story where like it's clear that we are on a losing position, and then the one thing that could potentially save us all, this god of the sun, the previous king of the gods, is useless. And it's also at the point of the story where like there's no going back now. We have to continue, otherwise we're doomed. The stakes get raised very, very well. Listen, I'm gonna get controversial and I'm gonna put The Throne of Fire in the Oracle's Prophecy tier. I like this book in places. I think it has good elements, but the story is mumbled and the behavior of some of these characters is just kind of unforgivable to me. So yeah, this is the best I can do for it. However, my opinion changes a lot when we get to The Serpent's Shadow. I think this book is probably the best written book out of the Kane Chronicles series. I think the stakes in this one feel so high. Like, I'm sorry, they are losing that battle against the forces of chaos so hard. Mages are getting killed. You have so much death. The sun is about to be eaten. Ra is useless. The gods are not helping much. The feeling of doom in this book is sometimes almost like overwhelming, but it's still great. Like, this is not a threat that you can just ignore and be like, okay, whatever, they're just gonna defeat it. No, the way that this book takes everything we've seen up until this point and just like raises that up to like 20 is crazy. I like the mechanic of shadows that gets introduced in this book specifically. I think that gets explained very, very well. Unlike some of the mechanics that we've seen previously from the Kane Chronicles, this one I really, really enjoy. I actually think that the powers that the characters have in this book make so much more sense than the ones we see in The Throne of Fire. They feel more logical, even though I still wouldn't call them like well balanced. The final fight in this book is probably my favorite part of it. Like, it is very, very cool. I like that Apophis isn't just a threat that they like defeat. Like, this isn't a threat that they can just like defeat. He eats Ra, for God's sake. They have to fight him on multiple layers of Duat. Like, he is so powerful. That ending too, I think, is very, very cute. Zia and Carter, he pulled a bad bitch, and I have to applaud him for that. But I was never like the biggest fan of them together. It felt a little forced to me as well, but I still find them pretty cute. Sadie and Wald / Anubis is a different thing to me because like, I don't know. I think it's kind of weird that the two love interests of Sadie get combined into one person. Like, what a weird way to end a love triangle. That is very weird. I'm gonna put this book in the Ella recommends tier. I think it's easily the best book from the Kane Chronicles series. However, I still have like a few little criticisms here and there, and I still wouldn't call it perfect. Mostly because like, you know, the mistakes and the errors from the previous two books kind of carry over to this one as well. But I think it's probably the best of the three, in my opinion at least. So hopefully there are not going to be many Kane Chronicles stans in the comments that are going to like want to jump me. I hope for that. And now we can start talking about Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. I love Magnus Chase in such a specific way. Like, this series feels like it was like tailor-built for me specifically. I respond to it so well. I'm almost like sad that we never got to see Magnus and the crew again after, the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series ended. I would love to see new adventures with them because I've grown so attached to these characters. Like, I'm sorry, these are some of my favorite characters in the entirety of the Riordanverse. Like, Jason, Piper, Grover, Percy, Annabeth, move over, bitch, because Magnus Chase and the crew, that's where the real shit happens, okay? I love how balanced they are when it comes to their powers, but also their personalities and their backgrounds. I think they work so well together. They genuinely feel like puzzle pieces that fit well together and that create like a full image when combined. It's so good. Magnus, Samira, Hearthstone, Blitzen, and then also Alex Fierro. They're such a cool group and I love them. I want to join that gang. When it comes to the world building of Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard, I feel like it easily could have went very, very south very, very quickly. Like, the concept itself of like Yggdrasil and the 9 worlds, including that in a book about like Nordic mythology in the Riordanverse, that in and of itself is like a very, very dangerous concept to play with. But weirdly enough, I think it works very well here. The mechanic of world travel here, but also how these different worlds get so fleshed out. Like, this is like, what, 3 books? And in the first one, we already visit like 5 of them. I prefer this take on the like multiple worlds than the one presented in the Kane Chronicles. That one, to me, is a bit of a mess, and Duat is made to be this like mysterious place that nobody truly understands, and as a result the reader also doesn't understand how it works. And that's not the case for example, Jotunheim, Vanheim, Midgard, Asgard, Nidavellir, or later in the series also Alfheim. And I mean, talking about Alfheim, that one specifically, in my opinion, it almost feels like too fleshed out in places. Like, I don't need to see all that. I love that this book immediately switches up the format that we're sort of kind of used to in the Riordanverse, because the main character, after whom the entirety of the series is named, dies in the first 50 pages. Like, he gets his shit wrecked by Surtr. I mean, of course, that doesn't end things because he gets resurrected as one of the Einherji and he gets to live in Valhalla. But that is such a gag. Like, I was reading this for the first time. I was like, what the fuck? Did they just kill him? Like, there's no way they killed him. And then you read further and like, no, actually, he's dead. This is such a fun ride. But it also like I think explains the Nordic mythology and the take on it in Riordanverse very well. The world building here is very, very strong. And also in this book specifically, we get to learn so much about practically all of the main characters except for xofreyr, who doesn't appear in this book. They all get so much to do, and they all have a connection to the main story. Like, for example, you have the thread of Fenrir and how he has a history with Magnus. Also, you have his history with Blitzen. And then you also have, of course, Samira, because Fenrir is technically her brother, because Fenrir is the child of Loki, so is Samira. So there is that. So you have Samira's complicated relationship with her father, but then you also have another story like that with Hearthstone, which in this book, it doesn't get fleshed out that much. Like, we learn what happened, but we don't learn the details of what happened. That happens in the next book, and I mean, we're gonna talk about that. Loki is also probably the most effective villain in the Riordanverse, at least in my opinion. He is so conniving, so smart, and like, this man is terrifying. This book is fun. It's packed full of like chaotic events, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. It allows its characters to shine so much, and it's genuinely one of my favorite books in the entirety of Riordanverse. Dare I say, Calliope helped write the Sword of Summer, or maybe some other Nordic god? Is there a Nordic god of like writing? I don't know. And then we get to the Hammer of Thor. Some books in the Riordanverse are for girls who poop. This one is for bitches who shit. This might just be the best book in the entirety of Riordanverse, and I stand by that. That is a hill that I am willing to die on. First of all, like, look at this book. Look how it looks like. You see the title of it and how fucking wiped it is? That's because I've read this so many times. Listen, probably this might be the one book from the Riordanverse that I have reread the most times. I've read this front to back dozens of times. First of all, book 1 already made me care about this character so much. But book 2, oh my god, like half of the time I'm reading this, I'm like, I need a gun. I need to protect these people. The parental trauma and the relationship with Loki of Samira and then also with Alex is so interesting to see. I love how they represent different takes on their father's legacy. The representation Alex gives is also incredible. And then Hearthstone. Hearthstone in this book. Oh god. Whenever I get to that section of the book that takes place in Alfheim, my blood starts to boil. I start getting very, very violent. And listen, I am a very chill person, or at least I think I am. Like, I don't really feel angry at many things in life, but that section makes me so mad, so angry. Like, I almost sometimes feel like, you know, one of those like old cartoons when people get angry and like there's like steam coming out of their ears. That's how I feel when I read that section, because holy shit, like that section awakes emotions in me that I don't feel on a daily basis. Hearthstone's story and that visit in his house, meeting his excuse of a father. Whenever this man is on the screen, on the page, I have the will to just punch somebody. Give me a gun. And listen, he doesn't get a happy ending, which good, but I want him to suffer more than that. Hearthstone is my baby. I am gonna protect that elf till the end of time with my own body if I have to. His story and how fucked up his childhood was, that might be the most like cruel and sad thing I've ever seen in the entirety of the Riordanverse. Like, this is a book for kids, technically. And Riordan is throwing shit like this in it? Like, oh my god. The abuse he faced, the manipulation, and how insane the guilt must be for him. Like, oh my god. I actually don't think we see more trauma in a character than Hearthstone in this book. Nico D'Angelo comes close to that. He is very, very fucking close. But Hearthstone takes the cake for me. This book introduces so many elements that I just love and that make me spiral in the best way possible. Hearthstone's story is, of course, one of them. That just actively makes me want to punch somebody, but also cry every single time I read that section. But then you also have Samira and her relationship with religion, which I find so interesting. She is a Nordic demigod, but is still Muslim. That is so cool, actually. And I would like to see maybe like that topic specifically be developed slightly more. I feel like there's so much room for interesting reflections, specifically in the context of Riordanverse about different religions. I think that's so cool. I mean, that kind of does get developed in the third book, but I don't know. I want to hear what you guys think about it, because I personally found it very cool. Alex and their identity is great to see, and I think it's also explained perfectly. I love Alex Fierro. Loki being an abusive dad, found in the kitchen, and his almost like parallel behavior to Hearthstone's father. Ooh, that's so... makes my blood boil. And then you also have like the insane stakes of the story. You have everything that happens to Blitzen. You have the promise that Samira makes to Amr in front of Heimdall. The threat of the giants. Like, this book has everything. This book makes me nervous every single time I read it. And like, I know this book like the back of my fucking hand. Like, it's crazy. The fuck is this? I think it also starts some very important discussions that feel organic, like they don't feel forced. Like, for example, the discussion about religion or like gender identity or parental trauma, for that matter. Like, it's done so well, and it only like enhances my attachment to these characters. Like, they are my family for real. The Hammer of Thor lands itself in the highest tier in this video. I love this book to death. And now we go to the final book of the Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard series, which is of course the Ship of the Dead. First of all, I love that Percy shows up in this book. Like, I love crossovers, but specifically in the context of the Riordanverse, crossovers always make me think of like, how does this world even work? Like, think about it. If Gaia, for example, was to succeed in the Heroes of Olympus series and she like actually destroyed the entire civilization, how would the other pantheons react to that? Would they just be like, okay, whatever, you do you, like destroy everything, because that includes us? Or would they like appear and they'd be like, hey, not nice, leave us alone? Or like, would she just destroy a part of the earth? Like, how would that work? Or if Apophis would be to like eat the sun, which, I mean, he does, how would that affect, for example, Apollo? Or, well, Helios, not really, because he is already dead, but like, how would that work? I don't know, the correlations are so weird. I think this is something that we're not meant to think about really, but I cannot help but to do it. I don't know, sound off in the comments below. What do you guys think? I love this book. I think it ends the story of Magnus Chase very, very well. And I like that aside from like the crew that we've gotten used to of Samira, Hearthstone, Blitzen, and Alex, we also get to see other people take center stage for a second. Like, for example, Mallory, Halfborn, and TJ. And specifically the latter, what he gets to do and his curse related to Tyr, his godly parent. That is so stupid, yet so terrifying. We have barely seen him before, and I am so sad for this man. I feel so protective over him too. Getting to see more of Alex and their story, for example, with their dad and with the pottery thing. Like, I already loved Alex from the second book, but this adds so much more to their character. I love them. Also, Magnus slowly starting to fall for them is like the cutest crush and development process I've ever seen. Oh my god, I love them together. Alex and Magnus being endgame is everything to me. I love that. I also love that Magnus's take on his sexuality isn't that like, oh my god, what's going on? Am I gay now that I love Alex, who sometimes is a guy? Like, what does that make me? He doesn't care. He just lets himself feel love towards somebody else, and I love that. I love them. There's such good queer representation. Also, as a Hearthstone stan, that part with, you know, his father now being a dragon and him summoning, you know, the ghost or like the spirit of his dead brother, and also the words he hears from them. Emotional damage. The final battle, the journey to the fortress of Skadi, Mallory and her godly mother. There's so much character building. It doesn't feel rushed, which is so good. This book and the rest of the books in this series are practically perfect to me. Like, there's nothing I would have changed about them. And the only thing that actually makes me sad about them is that we've not seen Magnus Chase since. Like, is it crazy for me to say that I want to see my family again together on another quest? Like, come on, just give it to... I don't think this is ever going to happen. I don't think we're ever getting new books about Magnus Chase, because it's clear that Rick Riordan is currently very much in his Greek era. He's, you know, writing new books, and he's also, you know, working on the show. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think we're getting new Magnus Chase stories, but man, would I love to hear them. or read them or buy them or promote them. I don't know. The Ship of the Dead lands itself in the Apollos Haikus tier. Okay, so I am back after a few days. The break that I had to take was unfortunately a little bit longer. However, I have finished editing the previous part of this video and it's already an hour and 20 minutes. So it's very possible that this video is gonna hit the 2-hour mark and I don't want that to happen. So we're gonna be speeding things up right now. All of the cards, as you can tell, have for some reason bended. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know, you're watching my channel. I don't really have my shit together at most times, so clearly I didn't have my shit together for this one either. But I am back to talk about some of the best books in the Riordanverse. We still have 9 books left to rank, and we're going to be starting with the Trials of Apollo series. That is, of course, the Hidden Oracle. The concept of Apollo becoming immortal again and having to fight capitalism, very fun. Honestly, him as a teenager at first was like a lot to get used to. Like, he is very annoying at first, but the more we go, the more I warmed up to him. I really, really enjoy his style of narration. I also really, really enjoy the evolution that we get to see of his character throughout the books, which that's going to be like a big topic when we get to some of the later installments in the Trials of Apollo series. I also really, really enjoyed the addition of Meg to the story. I'm so happy that we finally get to see a kid of Demeter do something in this story. This is so fun to see. But also her story is like, it's almost like if Mr. Riordan decided that we all clearly really love traumatized characters from the previous books. So he decided to create another one, this time like traumatized in a way that honestly like is so horrifying. The shit that this girl went through and goes through in this series also. Man, I'm gonna be bold and say that the Hidden Oracle is probably my least favorite of the Trials of Apollo series. I think it takes a long time to actually get rolling. I do enjoy like the mystery that we see in Camp Half-Blood when, you know, we have all of the campers and some of them are disappearing and there are some like weird voices, and also there's some other thread that we don't know, and we don't have any source of like communication with other camp and other heroes. So like, it's all, there's this like air of mystery that I really, really enjoy. But sometimes I do also wish that like more would happen. And also, I'm sorry, but sometimes just like reading, you know, Apollo or Lester, as he is called now, just like crying about how horrible he has it. And like also him complaining about having acne. Like, bitch, have you looked at my face? That is my culture. Don't you dare make fun of it. On the other hand, though, this book also gives us more of Will and Nico, which I am always going to be a fan of. And I also really enjoy seeing the take of Apollo as a dad in that specific relationship. And also his relationship to Austin and Kayla, who are, you know, his other children who are in camp. Like, that is so fun. And also, side note, this book fully just introduces Mpreg to Riordanverse through Kayla, because Kayla has 2 dads. She has Apollo and she has her regular dad, and it's fully like stated in the book that like Apollo gave birth to her, I believe. So well, I also really like the Grove of Dodona. I think it's a very, very cool place. And the concept of it is so good. I also really liked seeing Rhea for the first time in this series appear, like just in general. It was so cool. I honestly really enjoyed the concept of the prophecies as well, and them being like at the center of the plot of the series. And I also really like the greedy capitalists, you know, the Caesars, and how they are taking advantage of everything around them and just like ruining the world as a result. I know that technically they weren't supposed to be a metaphor for capitalism. I at least I don't think they were planned to be that, but that's how I always seen them, so that's how I'm gonna choose to interpret them. And also them getting like retconned into the story. Typically, I hate retcons. I really don't like retcons in stories. I think they're a cheap way to like make something work. But in this specific case, it actually makes a lot of sense when you think about it. I think the threat in the final fight is kind of underwhelming. And also kind of just like head scratching, because like, how do you make a statue sick? Like, is that really how you want to defeat a statue? Like, last time I checked, statues don't have lungs or like nostrils and like sinuses. Like, okay. However, this book cover might be my favorite out of like all of them. Like the symbolism in it is crazy. I do, however, think like all of the covers of the Apollo's trials, the trials of Apollo, are really, really good, top tier. This is probably my favorite, or maybe book 4 is my favorite. I don't know. I think book 5 is the weakest cover wise, but I think this one and book 4 are the 2 of my favorites. The Hidden Oracle is gonna land in the Ella Recommends tier. I really like this book. I do, however, think there are better books in the series. And now we move on to The Dark Prophecy. Honestly, this cover is also very sick. I really like it. This is a really, really good book. First of all, the Union Station is probably like the coziest and the warmest place in all of Riordanverse. Like, I want to live there. And also, found family in this book goes crazy. Like, I love the found family trope. I personally am of the belief that the found family trope in fictional media is the best trope. Just in general, there's not a better trope than found family. You can argue with me in the comments. It will be pointless though. This book is also very huge for sapphics because, you know, we have retired lesbian hunters of Artemis, which we love to see that. Like, this is such a perfect place. I want to live there. And speaking of Artemis, I think it's very cool to see her relationship with Apollo, even though she cannot like interject herself into the story. We see a lot of it from the perspective of Apollo and how he cares for his sister. But also we see that Artemis clearly cares a lot too, but she just isn't allowed to show up. And I mean, she doesn't show up until like book 4. And even in book 4, she only shows up for like a moment and it's her like Roman version. So, you know, we don't really see much of her, but what we get to see of their sibling bond and how Artemis still tries to help her brother on his quest, it's really, really cool. This is also the book where like everything that Apollo has done as a god in a way is going to bite him in the ass. And I mean, I would say that we saw that in book 1, but book 2 really like makes it clear that all of this series is going to just be like facing Apollo against his own like mistakes from the past, from back when he was a young god and hurt a ton of people. Because you have what? You have Trophonius, you have Agamethus, you have Commodus, you have Hemithea, you have even like Britomartis, really. Like, this is crazy. This is also the book where we get to see, you know, him unlocking new parts of himself that we previously just didn't have. His evolution as a person, though, is like very, very beautiful to watch. He really changes so much. It doesn't just like affect his powers or his immortality. It really shows you that this change affected him in his mind too. Like, it genuinely made him human. I love characters that are able to evolve, and dare I say, Apollo has probably the best evolution process in the entirety of Riordanverse. The way that this book shows us the power of homosexuality and found family, like, I just kind of have to stand. I do want to say that this is my favorite book in the Trials of Apollo series. It's so good. And like, genuinely, the guilt of Apollo, how gay it is, Meg coming back. You have the intrigue of it all, the entire thing with Georgina and her moms and what happens to her. You have Leo and Calypso doing things. It's so much fun. And also on that topic, Leo and Calypso, I am actually a fan of them two together. I actually kind of enjoy it. I love that Leo just like managed to pull a bad bitch. I love that for him. And I think they could be a cute couple. Of course, you know, we see in the book 5 that like they are still working on some things, but I wish them all the best. Also, I am a very, very big fan of the Arrow from the Grove of Dodona. She's kind of like the Wendy Williams of Riordanverse when you really think about it. And I love that. Dare I say, Calliope helped write this book. Now we go to The Burning Maze, aka the book that shook the entire fandom.
My one thing was I went into the Disney Channel building and I sat down with the president of Disney Channel and I said, I want to make history. And that's what this is.
Weirdly enough, every series in Riordanverse based on like Greek and Roman mythology, around book 3 is always the moment where like the entire fandom is left stunned. Think about it. You have Titan's Curse, where you have 2 major character deaths. Then in Heroes of Olympus, you have Mark of Athena, where Percy and Annabeth learn firsthand the rules of gravity. And this book This book made me care about Jason Grace. I never really cared too much about him until this book, and we got to see how for real he means so much to everybody. What happens to him, it just like genuinely leaves so much impact, and the ripple effect of that is so insane. That scene is so breathtaking too. I don't really know how people feel about it, but I personally think that this turns the Caesars into like actual threats. This makes the threat so much more real. In a way, it's a wake-up call. And from like the storytelling perspective, I personally really enjoy it because this prompts so many interesting conversations and plot points in the future books and even in this book itself. I think this is also where Apollo really gets faced with so much survivor's guilt and grief that he probably never felt as a god. Like a god with survivor's guilt is crazy. I think Jason is probably the number one reason why this whole journey has such an effect on Apollo. I think Meg's backstory getting more explored in this book is also very good, and I loved seeing that. Even though I feel very, very sorry for her. Seeing Grover again, I also really, really loved. Caligula is a fucking creep and I hate him. Burn it with fire. He is so just like psychotic, honestly. I think the entire idea around Helios and him being partially a threat as a dead god is so ridiculously cool. His essence, killing things and like ruining nature, that compared with Medea showing up, Caligula doing his shit, everything that happens with Jason. You have Meg's backstory, you have Hierophile. This was so good. I am gonna place it in Apollo's haikus, mostly because I am afraid of what the fandom thinks about it. Personally, I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's the best book in the series. However, I think it does a lot of very interesting things, and like the impact of this book is just like insane. You cannot look over the impact of this specific book. And then we move on to my sneak favorite in the Trials of Apollo. That is, of course, the Tyrant's Tomb. I think seeing Camp Jupiter again with this like added feeling of pending doom is so cool. And I think it really warms you up to that place. We see it earlier in like the Son of Neptune, and there you can already tell that it's like a great place, but this book specifically makes you so much more attached to it and makes you want to defend it. The fact that in like the first 50 to 60 pages we see Jason's coffin get delivered, you have Apollo getting poisoned, you have the funeral, you have Lupa showing up, like it immediately leaves an impression of like, oh, we're not fucking around this time. Like this shit is real, we are losing, and it's only gonna get worse from here on out. And it does. We are starting at the lowest point we've been at so far, and it doesn't get better from here. And also the undead presence in this book specifically is so prominent, and it only furthers that. This is the book where Apollo really, really starts thinking about his mortality and the mortality of his friends. And that's where you introduce the undead factor. Congratulations to the chef, to everyone involved. Perfect. Also thinking about how Leo never got to talk to Jason after he disappeared. Girl. Well, like this book is so sad and also so terrifying in places. Like the zombies of the killed legionnaires in the tomb. That specifically, that scene with Lavinia recognizing Bobby. Emotional damage. I don't think we talk about that a lot. And we should talk about it more because that was so crazy. I think Rhaena and Apollo also in their dynamic, it's interesting to watch, really. I think Rhaena being asexual is great. And I also love that Aphrodite is like an ally and is like, don't you dare touch her to Apollo. But also like the way she does that is like very weird. Like she just really inserted herself into the love life of this like random demigod and was like, okay, now I'm gonna wreak havoc. Like, okay, Aphrodite is an ally, I can tell, but at the same time, girl, time and place. I think more of Apollo's past mistakes coming back to bite him in the ass is always great to see. I think in this book, specifically the concept of Harpocrates, the god of silence, so good, so cool. This book makes me actively tired and stressed and nervous and scared. It's not an easy read. I would say it's borderline a book that whenever I'm on a reread of the series, I'm like, oh, okay, this is next. I need to prepare my crying equipment. And also this book is for the sapphics too, which we, as previously established, love. And now we move on to the last book in the Trials of Apollo. That is, of course, The Tower of Nero. As finales in Riordanverse go, I would say that this one is fine. I don't think it was the best. I don't think it was the worst either. I kind of love this ending for Apollo specifically. His last conversation with Meg too is so good. It kind of leaves you thinking about how all of this affected him. Is this gonna stay with him forever? Is he going to actually be a god that changed? We don't know. We really don't know. But I do think that the answer is yes. This ending, maybe not like fight-wise, but most sort of like emotionally, does really make me like feel a lot of things. Like on my reread of this book, for the purposes of this video, I did sort of shed a tear because that last 30 pages is just so beautiful. All of those things that Apollo experienced genuinely made him into a new person. He's not the same anymore, but one thing is for certain. He made actual friends, he found people that he loves, and those last 30 pages, as I said before, incredible writing. Yeah. We see Will and Nico again in this book, which I'm always a fan of. And I also love the way that the prophecy is done in this book. Altogether, I forgot to mention that earlier. I love that every book has like a different kind of prophecy. It has like a different poetic form. It has different connotations. I really enjoy that. I am not, however, the biggest fan of how long this book takes to actually develop into something. We are constantly on like some weird side quests that technically have something to do with the plot, but like, I don't know. I think the previous books do the feeling of like doom and dread and like, oh my god, we're all going to die, a little bit better than this one does it. When we get to the actual meat of the story though, it's great. The Tower of Nero and all the fighting there, but also seeing other kids who were manipulated by him, just like Meg was, it really puts into perspective how horrible Nero really is. I think the lessons that Apollo actually learns in this series kind of overshadow the final fights for me personally. The fight with Nero personally, I do think is good. A lot happens there and I personally enjoy it. The one with the Python though, it has a little bit of a resemblance to the Gaia fight, although in this one specifically, Python actually gets to do something. And like canonically, this fight lasts a couple days. So even though it's like only on like what, 50, 40 pages maybe, it's still a pretty massive fight. And like Apollo actually almost dies doing it. So yeah, it is serious. It does feel quick, but I think it's pretty okay. But yeah, I do think it's a great ending. I think it could have been way worse. And the growth of Apollo makes everything feel twice as good as it already was. Man, I'm so happy that I picked him as my godly parent when I was like 11. That was like genuinely the best choice I could have made. And also the last words of this book in the Polish translation are "Wzywajcie mnie, będę was wspierał," which means basically summon me, I'm gonna support you. The connotation being that he's gonna be your friend. Like, oh my. This book lands in Apollo's haikus. I think when it actually gets to, you know, the most serious plots points, it's very good. The beginning is pretty underwhelming, but like the lessons and the ending of it is just so good. Like, man, I love the Trials of Apollo. I actually, whenever I reread this, I'm like, man, these books are really good, and they offer probably one of the most unique perspectives you can see in Riordanverse. You have a literal god deconstructing the entire like belief system of a god and learning to see things from the perspective of humans. It's so good. Genuinely so peak. I technically could end the video here, but there are still 4 other books that we have to rank that are like the spin-offs of all of this. Well, technically all of these books for the most part are spin-offs, but these are like the spin-offs of spin-offs. So we are going to begin with the Chalice of the Gods. So this is one of those spin-offs about Percy needing to collect recommendation letters in order to get to the university in New Rome. Honestly, this is a very fun concept. Like, I like the story where maybe the fate of the world isn't on his shoulders for once, and it's actually just like slightly less serious. It is serious because we get to see like actual fights. It gets pretty violent in some places, and also it is about Percy's future, but you know, it's not that serious ultimately. This, I would say, out of the 2 spin-off books about the recommendation letters, is the one I personally prefer. And I think that solely comes from the fact that this one actually prompts some interesting reflections to be made by the reader. I think it's refreshing and also made a better impression than the second one on me personally. The story of Ganymedes and his trauma, like, poor guy. I knew his story before, but this one really puts into perspective like how traumatized he is, and he's been this way for like millennia. I like the concept of youth and aging being explored from the perspective of someone who has been in like life-threatening danger so many times and who maybe thought that he wouldn't make it to adulthood. Those final pages of him accepting the fact that he's gonna age and all of his loved ones are going to age, it's actually so like beautiful. Also, you have Hebe, you have Ganymedes, you have Geras, who are all gods that have something to do with aging and age. It's a great concept and it does actually feel very thought through. Also, the trio being turned into like little kids was very interesting. I don't know if I liked it, but it was funny in places. Like, and also it does give you a closer look at like their prime instincts. So in that regard, I actually kind of like it. I'm gonna give The Chalice of the Gods the Ella recommends tier. I think it's a decent book. The Wrath of a Triple Goddess, on the other hand, well, this book I've read twice, and each time I kind of felt like I was forcing myself to even like finish it. I definitely don't think that this is one of the best reads that Riordanverse can offer. I would say this is one of the worst. I think the concept of like recommendation letters really worked in The Chalice of the Gods because that book like actually had a message, and that message sort of connects to Percy, you know, fighting for the recommendation letters because he's technically fighting for his future, for his adulthood, and like it made sense, you know. Seeing more of Hecate is always fun. However, this entire story is like very, very forgettable and just not really that interesting. It feels like very random. It kind of is giving like the vibe of like a random one shot that was just developed into a full book. I don't know if that makes sense, but it does to me. Many times when I think of Percy and Annabeth, I completely forget about this book. It's just so irrelevant and I didn't really like anything about it that much. The magic of it is like fun, but there's no stakes, no interesting reflections. They did us or tasked with house sitting by Hecate. Like, okay. The School of Magic though, like that is a cute concept, and the fact that it needs to be like restored and that Eudora has history with Hecate. There's something here to explore. There is something here that I could like possibly enjoy, but it just doesn't get developed on enough. And as a result, I don't really like this book. Dare I say, Otis and Ephialtes would have liked this book. 2 more books left, and now we go to my favorite yaoi. No, but for real, like the sun in this story is like actually pretty good. Seeing Will and Nico take center stage is always fun. I love that. But there is also like something about this book where you can tell that it had a co-writer, because if Rick would have just written it solo, it would have looked much differently. When reading this, I feel the energy of someone else. Well, that someone being, of course, Marco Shiro. And listen, I think that they do a pretty good job, but sometimes it stops feeling like a Riordanverse book. And I don't know about that. The story of it though, I really love. It's the story of learning how to accept your partner fully and embracing them, whilst also trying to tie up loose ends from the Heroes of Olympus books, with specifically the Titan Bob. I think the concept of Nyx, you know, a primal goddess, being this fixated on a teenager though, is very weird. And also the whole thing of like, you cannot change. Like, okay, it does feel like slightly conservative coded to me. Like she's trying to get Nico to like conversion therapy, but for like people with dark souls who are trying to reject said darkness. I mean, sure, it does lead to some pretty cool moments. I think Nico and Will leave this experience stronger, and specifically, I think Will's fear is so interesting. He chose to be a boyfriend of someone who has a very dark past, and that does partially define Nico. But we see that until this point, Will wasn't fully ready to handle all that and accept all that, embrace all that. This book, story-wise, isn't my favorite, but I do like what it does for the character journey of Will and Nico as a couple. I think the story might have holes in it though. It might be slightly confusing to me, and Nyx specifically might be slightly off-putting in my opinion, but their journey together and saving Bob is really fun. And actually, I've recently reread this book, And I was surprised by like how much I actually liked it. Also knowing that Hades approves of Will and like so does Persephone. Very cute. The Sun and the Star is gonna land in the Ella recommends tier. I like it. I just think that there are some things that could have been tweaked about it. And I think that brings us to our last and most recent book in the timeline. That of course being The Court of the Dead. This book, I don't know if I liked it really. I love the message of it and like choosing your own destiny, which we see earlier for Nico in The Sun and the Star, and now we see it for a few monsters. That is cute. I like that message. I like the almost, I don't know what to call it, like the concept of racism against monsters and how that gets solved and the definition of monsters getting changed. Like, I do enjoy it, especially, you know, in this current political climate. This book is extra woke, and that I enjoy. The story though and the characters, there are some points where this book like really drags. The first 200 pages of this, I think I was just personally just like forcing myself to finish reading this because it dragged so much. It's cute, but it just really isn't that interesting. And also these mythics that they introduce, the like rehabilitated monsters, their characterization is for the most part really bad. I enjoyed Asterion for the most part. I think there is a lot of depth to his character, even though there are some like silly things that they just added that I don't think were that necessary, but I do like him. I think Ariel is also pretty cool, and so is Semele. I think the ending for Semele is also really fun, and I loved seeing that. I think it was like a very random thing for them to do, but honestly it really worked for me. But then you get monsters like Orcus, who is just like a cute little griffin, and his entire thing is that he farts. Like, okay, I am not 9 years of age. This isn't that funny. Also, this book contains like a massive plot hole, which it was brought to my attention only like recently. Basically, we get introduced to Savannah, who is of the legacy of Minerva, despite the fact that in the Mark of Athena, it is explicitly stated that Minerva is a virgin goddess and thus doesn't have children, and that is one of the reasons why everybody in Camp Jupiter is pretty weird to Annabeth, because she is the daughter of Athena, and Athena is of course the Greek version of Minerva. So technically, from the Roman standpoint, children of Athena shouldn't exist because Minerva is a virgin goddess. I guess Rick must have forgotten. But then we get to like the actual threats of the story and how much Hazel gets involved in it, and I do start liking more. The practically like lynching that we see in that court is a little much, but I also read this and I was like, okay, this hits a little too close to home in certain places. I think this story is very weak until we get to like the final 100 pages, and then it finally starts to be interesting again. It does take a while to get there though. Also, side note, love Naomi Solis. She is such a diva. I love her. And I also love her support for Will and Nico. Like, we love supporting parents. The Court of the Dead is gonna land in the Oracle's Prophecy. I know this might be slightly controversial, but I personally just like, I don't like the story of it really until like the last, as I said, final 100 pages or like 150 pages. And also in places, it really does feel like it was written for kids. And like all of these books are technically for kids, but this one specifically feels like very kidified. Like, all of these books you can read as an adult and be like, okay, this is fun, I enjoy this. But this one, I don't know, it has a bit of like a Cocomelon vibe to it. But yeah, this is my final ranking. Definitely let me know if you agree with it or if you would have changed anything. Thank you so much for sitting through the entire video. If you did, please leave a comment down below. Tell me which of these books is your favorite or which is your favorite character. Tell me everything you want to tell me. Honestly, I'm going to be definitely in the comment section interacting with a lot of the comments if there are going to be any. So I would really appreciate you leaving a word there. And yeah, thank you so much for making it till the end. I love you a lot. This is probably one of the last Percy Jackson videos I'm going to be doing in a while, because I'm going to be focusing on a lot of different things as well. But there is going to be some Riordanverse content in the future, I'm sure. I have a couple ideas of what I want to do, but I need to start like workshopping them a little, and then I can talk about them a little bit more. Next week though, is going to be a very exciting video, because I'm going to be slightly back to music and like video essays about music specifically. We're going to be talking about Cat's Eye. I'm very excited about that video. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm curious what the reception of it is going to be. So yeah, I would quickly like to remind you that you can always subscribe to the channel. You can like the video, comment down below, share it around, and stay tuned because I drop videos weekly. And so you are always going to be fed when you're a part of the xofreyr YouTube channel family, I guess. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.